The group realized that they weren't just playing an ordinary game, but were stepping into a true nightmare where restless spirits roamed and terrifying secrets gradually unfolded. Will they survive this night of horror, or become part of the chilling tale passed down through the ages? A horrifying exploration in an abandoned hospital, Chap 3. In her panic, Trin ran frantically, desperately seeking an escape from this nightmare, unaware that the horror was far from over. With her heart pounding wildly, she ran out of the hospital room, determined to leave the haunted hospital. But in her terror, she lost her way and stumbled into the morgue. The air in the morgue was frozen in silence and darkness, her footsteps echoing in the empty space. The fog text her terrified eyes darted around, and in her panic, she heard a strange noise from one of the refrigerators. She couldn't believe what she heard. Overwhelming fear clouded her thoughts. Yet, an invisible force compelled her to approach the refrigerator. As the door opened, a massive figure appeared before her, a man in a patient's uniform lying inside, his face cold and eyes sharp. She trembled in such fear that she couldn't move. The man stepped out of the refrigerator with a sinister smile, advancing towards her with a menacing glare. Dread and suspense filled the air, and Trin knew she was facing a grave danger. At that moment, a boy suddenly appeared from the darkness, pulling her away from danger. "Run!" Thang shouted, dragging Trin away from the demon's grasp. The two ran through the morgue, their footsteps echoing in the dark space. But safety was only fleeting. A dark vortex swept them into a land of shadows where the demon awaited. The demonic figure in the patient's uniform staggered through the darkness, trapping them in a circle of terror. They tried to fight back, but the demon's strength far exceeded theirs. The nightmare deepened as they were pulled into an inescapable darkness. The demon's presence loomed, denying them any chance of escape. Trin felt paralyzed with fear. Though Thang was also terrified, he held her hand tightly, showing patience and support. Finally, the darkness swallowed them, their screams echoing in the empty space. Their efforts against the demon's threat vanished into the night, leaving only horror and destruction. Than and Lin arrived at the morgue just in time to see Thang and Trin being pulled into the darkness and disappearing. Lin recoiled in horror but was pulled back by Than. She turned to hear his voice echoing in the dark. "Everyone has been found." At that moment, Lin realized something strange. Than's eyes suddenly turned deep and haunting. Not the eyes of a human, but of something terrifying. "Is it you?" Lin asked, her voice trembling. Than nodded slightly, and everything became clear. Lin realized that from the beginning, it was Than, the new kid at her school, who suggested and persuaded the group to enter the abandoned hospital. When they wanted to refuse, he insisted. The whole group had been deceived, and the hospital was a trap to capture and conquer the innocent souls of these naive children. The other ghosts trapped here had exploited their curiosity to create a painful and horrifying game. The warnings from the locals were no longer a joke. Lin regretted her curiosity and thrill-seeking, which led her and her friends into a spiral of suffering and danger. Years ago, this hospital conducted cruel experiments on humans, and the tormented souls still wander in its shadows, seeking revenge. The abandoned hospital became their eternal prison, where they suffered endless pain and obsession. Then said, "My friends and I also played hide and seek here. We played many times, but it never ended, until I found you. You will play for us now." As Then finished speaking, dark shadows appeared behind him. Eerie laughter echoed through the hospital corridors. Lin realized those shadows were her friends who had entered the abandoned hospital with her, but now their eyes were empty and soulless. She trembled, unable to speak, overwhelmed by despair. "Now you will be the seeker, Lin."